Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third Nourish to Flourish webinar. If this is your first time joining us, we're so glad to have you back, or have you. If you've joined us before, welcome back. My name is Kelsey, and I'm one of the clinical dietitians at the Stanford Lifestyle and Weight Management Clinic, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Today's webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on the Stanford Health Library under Lifestyle and Weight Management Recorded Lectures, along with the PowerPoint slides. You'll also receive an email after this session with a link to the recording. If you have any questions during the webinar, please add them to the Q&A chat box that's located at the bottom of the screen, and we'll review those with our presenter during the Q&A portion of today's webinar. Now I have the pleasure of introducing my colleague, Gina, who is today's presenter. Gina is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and board-certified specialist in obesity and weight management. For the past 5 years, Gina has been an integral part of the Stanford healthcare family, serving as a clinical dietitian at the Stanford Lifestyle and Weight Management Center. Gina is passionate about providing individualized nutrition counseling and practical strategies to support sustainable and impactful lifestyle changes. Her holistic approach helps individuals balance the demands of their personal and professional lives, while also preparing for and managing bariatric surgery or building healthy long-term habits. In her spare time, Gina enjoys traveling with her husband, testing new recipes in the kitchen, shopping at Trader Joe's, and trying out new workout classes. Today, we'll learn how to take the stress out of mealtime with Meal Planning Part 1, Mastering the 3 Ps of Meal Planning. This webinar introduces the foundational principles of meal planning, purchasing, and preparation to help you create efficient, budget-friendly, and nourishing meals for your busy lifestyle. We will learn how to design weekly menus, shop smarter, and streamline meal prep to save time and reduce food waste. Take it away, Gina.
All right. Thank you, Kelsey, and welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, meal planning. Now, when you hear someone start talking about meal planning or meal prepping, what do you think of? And take a few seconds to think about where your brain goes when we talk about meal planning and meal prepping. Now, I'm often talking about meal planning quite a bit, and a few common themes come about when I'm talking with individuals about meal planning and prepping. And a few of those are, I don't have enough time to meal plan. I just can't do that. Or I have all these recipes and I want to create all these fun things, but how do I make all the time and energy to accomplish that? Or I want to meal plan and meal prep, but I have no idea how to get started. And another popular one is I want to do this, but I feel like I have to spend my entire weekend planning and prepping. And yes, those are all very common barriers to meal planning and prepping. But with my help today, I'm going to have you be more familiar with all of the meal planning magic. And we're going to go through all of these different tips to help execute meal planning efficiently and making it a fun and enjoyable process. And I'm going to help you decide how to execute with that roadmap here today. Now, thinking about those few things you were just thinking about a moment ago when thinking about meal planning and things that maybe stop you from executing them, we're going to have you fill out this poll. And so I want you to think about what you find most challenging about meal planning. So go ahead and pull out your phones, your camera to take a picture of these QR codes that you see here, or if you're on a computer, you can type in the Join by Web link in the smart bar of your computer and go ahead and select one of the options you see here. Lack of time, overwhelmed by too many choices, unsure how to get started, sticking to the plan, and take a few minutes to really think about that. What do you find to be the most challenging about meal planning? And I'll give us about 30-ish seconds to fill out the poll, and then we'll share the results with everyone who's here. All right, maybe a few seconds more. I want to give everyone enough time to put their answer in for the poll here. Okay, and let's head on to the results. So, what do we think we find the most challenging about meal planning? Lack of time, overwhelmed by too many choices, unsure how to get started, or sticking to the plan? And our results are coming in here. So 40% lack of time. Yep, typically the number one thing that I hear when working with individuals. Overwhelmed by too many choices. Definitely understand that. Unsure how to get started with 19% and sticking to the plan. Yes, we might feel comfortable developing the plan, but how do we stick to it? And we're going to tackle all of these different challenges with meal planning today, which brings us to our objectives for our today's chat. So when we're thinking about meal planning, I really want to help you develop practical tools to minimize meal prep time and increase efficiency. I am all about working smarter, not harder. And we're going to talk about some tips to execute that as well. Learning this simple, repeatable 3-step system for meal planning success, which brings us to our 3 Ps, which we'll get to in just a second, and inspiring creativity and confidence in the kitchen. The kitchen can feel like unfamiliar territory for so many of us, or maybe we have so many ideas and inspiration to draw from when it comes to cooking, but we're just not sure how to execute it. And so we'll talk about some ways to do that as well. But I often say the more fun and the more exciting the process is, the more likely you're going to buy into it and stick with it, and as well as your family. So let's kick things off with the 3 Ps. This is how we're building our roadmap for how we're going to talk about the meal planning process. So with our 3 Ps here, we have planning, which is our first stop where we put everything together. And we'll talk about all of the ways that you'll go ahead and build the plan. But without a plan, how do we expect ourselves to be successful? How do we even expect to have the healthy ingredients in our pantries and our fridges that we need? So we'll talk about all of the details involved in the planning process, which then brings us to the second P, which is purchasing. We'll talk about some strategies to utilize when you are doing your grocery shopping to maximize your efficiency while also making sure you have all of the nutrient dense items that you need. And lastly, we'll finish up with our third P, prepping. This is really where the meal prepping and magic plan really comes into play, and you'll see how we do that. So first things first, let's start with the plan, because when we have a plan, we're 100% more successful. And so when you get started with the planning process, I want you to think about visualizing your week. What does it look like? Are you working late? Is your family home? Are you alone? Are you going out to dinner with friends? Do you have to work late and so you're going to need something quick on the way home? Really taking a look at what your schedule like is going to make all of the difference. We want to build around your schedule rather than coming up with all of these meal planning ideas that maybe don't actually work for what you have on your schedule for the week. So as you can see, our plan here for the week, we have Sunday through Saturday, and you could easily develop a chart just like you see here. You also will talk about some other ways you can do the planning in a more efficient written down matter as well. But if you're looking at your calendar here, take out your family calendar, your work calendar, personal calendars, cross-checking appointments, and this is where it brings us. So we see on Monday, we're going to have a late work meeting. So we know our energy levels will be low on Monday night, and that's not going to be the night to create this very elaborate meal that you saw in a fancy cookbook that you've had stowed away in your library for a while. This is where we're really going to want something quick, efficient, and nutritious. This also brings us to Wednesday and Thursday, where we have karate practice pickup as well as soccer practice pickup. This is where we're going to be hungry. We're also short on time. Maybe we're getting to bedtime a little bit later. And so this is where we'll also need to integrate meals that we know we can prepare quickly, but again, really locking in the nutrition piece there. And then Saturday, we see we have friends in town. So we're likely going to head out to dinner. And while this plan may not 100% resonate with your typical plan, but this just gives you an idea of how to go through the week and really gain an understanding of days I'm busy and days I have a little bit more time. So we see here that Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday, we have a little bit more flexibility in the evening to create some meal planning magic. Now, moving on to the next part of the plan. You've looked at your schedule and now you're thinking, now what? I know when I'm busy, I know when I'm free, but I still don't know what to eat. And this is where I want you to think of these couple tips to get the planning process started. So first things first is your go-to meal. You know those moments when you're short on time and you know you always have these certain ingredients available in your house and you throw them in a bowl together. Maybe this is a breakfast bowl with scrambled eggs, frozen and veggies and some hash browns. Maybe this is a cheese quesadilla. For me, this is often a ground turkey sweet potato bowl. I always have frozen ground turkey in the fridge as a backup and sweet potatoes on hand. We all have some version of these go-to meals. Think about how you want to incorporate those go-to meals on a day where you're busier, where you are working late, or you have soccer practice pickup, etc. You also can invest in a theme. I love a theme, and this is especially great if you are eating with others at home. And oftentimes, and maybe some of us have experienced this, when your roommate, your significant other, your spouse, your kids say, "Hey, what's for dinner?" That's probably the most dreaded question when it comes to meal planning and being responsible for not only the planning, but the purchasing and then the prepping. And so when you come up with a theme and you gauge responses from those around you, that can really make it easier. So here we go. Taco Tuesday, Pizza Friday, Meatless Monday, Thai-inspired Thursday. Really make those themes work for you and allow that to guide what recipe you decide to go with or just what ingredients you're going to utilize when you're picking a theme. You also can't forget to take inventory. I am notorious for going to the grocery store, putting things into the cart that weren't on the list, stocking them away in the pantry, and then 6 months later, I go, gosh, I have so many cans of beans in here. What am I going to do with them? So this is your reminder as you're planning, open up the pantry, open up the freezer, the refrigerator, actually take a look to see what you already have at home, and that might inspire a nice recipe. And as you can see here in our image, we have a variety of beans. We have maybe some canned tomatoes and some chilies, and instantly that makes me think, let's go ahead and make a 3-bean chili. And that's how that will inspire that meal plan for the week. You also want to think about embracing creativity. Like I said, the more fun we can have with the process, the more likely we are to stick with this. And maybe this is your moment to open up that social media platform of choice, look at those recipes you've saved, and maybe that's a moment to start trying something new to make food a little bit more fun rather than feeling like you're eating the same foods over and over. This also could be a great time to pull out that favorite cookbook of yours and take a look and find a recipe that looks really interesting and is on par with the summer or spring or fall seasons, etc. But most importantly, as you're taking inspiration from your pantry, online resources, different themes, I want you to think about the essentials. Anytime that we're planning what meals we're having, I want you to prioritize PFC, protein, fiber, and colorful carbohydrates. When you're planning your meals, I want you to be able to check off all of those 3 components to make sure how you're fueling your body is actually giving you the nutrition that you need. Now, thinking a little bit more in depth with the planning, as you're kind of thinking about all of these different options for your meal plan for the week, we want to have something tangible. So, what I often say is write it down. We have all these things in our brain all the time, so it might be easy to forget that I already planned something for the night of soccer practice pickup, and that might help prevent me from stopping for something quick on the way home. So, write it down. Whether you want to invest in a meal planning pad, I really like this one from Amazon that has a magnetic on the back. You put it right on the refrigerator, and this makes it convenient. So especially if you're eating with others at home or someone gets home before you and can start the cooking process, no one's asking you 100 times, "Hey, what's for dinner? What are we doing tonight?" It's already there for you and everyone else at home to see. Now, if you're not someone who likes to go more old school and write things down, what I usually say is invest in some kind of technology. So, for example, we all have our cell phones, right? We often carry those everywhere with us. And so, a great way to utilize a grocery list is to go ahead and use the reminder app if you do have an Apple phone. This is where you can create a running grocery list to always remind you of things that you might be running out of or keeping track of ingredients you need to use for a meal that you're deciding to make. So that can be another strategy. And of course, there are so many different meal planning apps out there. Two that really stick out to me are Paprika, which you see here on the screen, as well as the second one, Meal Lime, like the lime or the fruit. I like both of these meal planning apps because they give you some inspiration. They put up all these different recipes that are of interest to you based on what you typically put into the app when you first join and log in. Both of these apps are free, I should mention, easy to download both for Apple and Android. And so when you download these, they'll give you all of these great meal ideas. So chicken with sweet potatoes and broccoli, a shrimp tostada, a pumpkin bean chili, all of these different options, right? And as you click all of these different recipes, it'll actually pull all of the recipe ingredients together and it will create your grocery list for you. I mean, how easy and how awesome is that? You just pick what you like that works for you based on your food preferences, your family's, etc. So those can be a really great way if you have more of a difficulty figuring out and pulling that creativity of what to eat from other resources out there. And once we've created this plan, we want to start thinking more about this schedule. So we'll keep going back to this Sunday through Saturday scenario here. And so as we're thinking about this late work meeting on Monday, this is where we're going to utilize leftovers. And although some of us may not be the biggest fan of leftovers, this can be a really great way to utilize a quick and easy meal, but without having you to prep anything else. So we're implementing leftovers here for our late work meeting on Monday, and then also for soccer practice pickup on Thursday. This also brings us to Wednesday when we need something quick and easy to throw together. This is where we'll insert a go-to meal. So that ground turkey sweet potato bowls, like I mentioned, that's my go-to meal. But of course, you could insert your own go-to meal there. And then when we have friends in town, we're planning to go out to dinner. Now, you might be thinking, well, great, Gina, we've talked about all of these things we're going to do when we're busy, but we still don't know what we're eating on the days where we have a little bit more time. And that's where I want you to think back to inventory, inspiration, and theme. And so if we move on to that, this is where you'll see those other ideas we kind of briefly mentioned fall into play. So on Sunday, when we have a little bit more time, we're going to make this great big batch of 3 bean chili, which is utilizing all of those ingredients in the pantry. And because we're making a surplus of it, we can utilize it for leftovers on Thursday or even Monday if you don't mind eating the same thing back to back. That same concept goes in for Tuesday, where we're doing a fun theme, Taco Tuesday, and that's going to be a nice, quick, and easy meal to throw together as well. And then lastly, homemade pizza night Friday, another fun theme. And maybe this is something that your partner, significant other really loves, or maybe it's a great way to get the kids involved and it's almost like a new activity. So this is what we're going to base our purchasing off of as well for the week. Now, once our plan is made, we've started to write down all of our ingredients that we need for all of these different recipes, then it's finally time to head to the store. Now, when we think about the purchasing part, our second P here in our 3 Ps, I often say having a list is essential. I don't know about all of you, but when I go into the grocery store without a list, I throw random things into the cart. I have no idea oftentimes what I'm doing. And this really makes meal preparation at the end of the day or even throughout the week really challenging. And this might be even where I find I end up grazing, I don't really have a complete meal, and I'm not getting all the nutrients that I need. So do your best to create that list and stick to it. And I realized that also when you're in the grocery store can be an overwhelming place, especially depending on the day that you go grocery shopping. Lots of people and crowds. Maybe there's lots of different products and you don't know what to choose. Sometimes grocery stores can be an incredibly triggering place, especially if there's lots of advertisements or fun foods that maybe you're trying to be more mindful of when it comes to the consistent consumption of them. So I often say if the grocery store is not the place for you, then let's find a way around that. And oftentimes, this is where online shopping or delivery grocery services can really come into play. I also really like these because they really allow you to maximize your time. When you have that grocery list already in front of you, you go right onto the computer, you put in all the groceries that you need, you hit order, and then of course eventually you go to pick up those groceries or they're delivered to you. So yes, that might be a little more costly out of your pocket, but you're really paying for the time that you're giving yourself back. And that's where we might utilize different delivery services like Amazon Fresh, which is great. You also can get discounts that way if you are an Amazon Prime member, through Whole Foods as well. You can look into other delivery services like Good Eggs. Good Eggs is a really great option that provides groceries right to your front door, often providing organic produce. It also provides ready-made and semi-prepared options as well, which can be a really great way to maximize your time during the week. And then there's also plenty of options like Instacart, where you can, again, order from your favorite grocery store and have it delivered. So make this part of the equation work for you. We're trying to minimize any of the friction and the stress. So for you, if just the thought of going to the grocery store, purchasing, putting the kids in the car, putting the dog in the car, trying to do all the things, let's minimize that and keep it as simple as possible. Now, whether you're shopping in the store or you're ordering online, I do want you to look for sales or for digital coupons. So, downloading your favorite grocery store app like Sprouts Market, you see here, oftentimes you pull up the app, they'll have coupons ready to go, and that's something you can utilize at checkout, whether you're ordering online or in the store. The same thing goes for places like Target, Walmart, Costco. I wish Trader Joe's had one, but hopefully we'll get there one day. That would be my dream to have a TJ's app there. But this can be a really great way to also inspire what you decide to plan for the week. If you're really trying to be cost effective, you can look at the apps and really utilize that to your benefit as well. And last but not least, prioritizing in season produce. This is a really nice budget building strategy when you think about what ingredients to buy when. For example, we're in the spring summertime right now, or almost to summertime. And so, right now, this is a really great time to buy avocados, asparagus, apples. Now is not the time to buy pomegranates and pumpkins, which are typically happening in the fall. And so if you are someone who really enjoys going to local farmers market or really wanting the best tasting produce, shopping in season can be a great way to do that, and often is more cost effective, because if you really wanted pomegranate or pumpkin right now, you'd likely have to pay a little bit extra. So it's just really kind of thinking about that when you're purchasing your goods. Now, all of this is great, right? You have your list, you're taking advantage of all of these great tips, but we still want to make sure that we're purchasing effectively and making the process really efficient to support the preparation. And so, what do I mean by that? When we think of those meals that we're making for the week, our three bean chili, our Taco Tuesday, our sweet potato bowls, and our pizza night, I want us to think about some shortcuts. And oftentimes, when people think of shortcuts, they often will say, well, isn't that the easy way out? And I often will say, exactly. Again, any way we can reduce the friction around meal planning and prepping, the easier it's going to be. And the easier it is for you to do, the more likely you're not only going to do it once, but twice, and then eventually you continue to do it and it becomes a habit. So, this is where I encourage you to take a look at those ingredients that you're writing down on the list. And rather than just expecting yourself to chop and prep everything from scratch, take a few shortcuts to alleviate the meal preparation. A couple different options you can see here, but for example, for a three bean chili, we already have our beans at home, but maybe we want to add some flavor and color to the meal. And that makes us think of garlic, onions, celery, carrots. But thinking about having to chop, prep, and do all of that, that right there makes us not even want to make it. So let's find a shortcut that still amplifies flavor, amplifies nutrition, but saves on time. So here you see we're going to buy some pre-cut celery, onion, and carrot, this nice little mirepoix that you can get at a lot of different grocery stores. And one of my favorite products, this is the Durot Gardens crushed garlic, which if you've ever peeled garlic and had to go through all of that, your fingers get sticky, it takes a lot of time, and you don't get a lot of bang for your buck. So what this is doing, they're doing all the hard work for you. They've ripped off the outer part of the skin of the clove of garlic. They've mashed it, minced it, and they put it into these little cubes. All you have to do is take it out from the freezer, pop a little cube out, and you have a clove of garlic ready to go. So this is really going to expedite the preparation, but it's really thinking a step ahead when you're doing the purchasing to make that prep a little bit easier. Same thing goes for Taco Tuesday. Rather than spending all of this time cutting up your bell peppers and onions or making your own rice cauliflower for maybe Taco Tuesday bowls or a Taco Tuesday salad, these are some great ways to get lots of flavor and color, but often things that you can just pop right into a saucepan and heat up really quickly, or even into the microwave depending on your preference. And so these are some things I really want you to start thinking about, and not only just for the convenience, but maybe also some pain points. For our sweet potato bowl here, maybe you love sweet potatoes, but again, thinking about chopping it is just something that you don't want to do. So again, you buy the pre-cut potatoes because you're willing to spend the time to make fresh protein the night of. Same thing for your pizza night, by making sure that you're also checking off that PFC, the protein, fiber, and color. We're going to get some pre-made pizza dough, put on all our fun, colorful toppings, but to make the protein part a little bit easier, especially on a Friday night when our tanks are empty, this is where we'll go ahead and have you add some pre-cooked chicken. So just really kind of working with the process to make it easier and reducing that friction to make the execution a little bit easier. All right, and that brings us to our final P of prep. Now, there is this magical moment. And I don't know if you all know about this magical moment, but the magical moment of bringing your groceries into your home, putting them on the counter, the kitchen table, and the moment you start unloading it, that is the magical moment. That is the time I want you to think, what can I do now to help save myself some time later? Oftentimes, most of us, no fault of our own, we unload all of our groceries, we put that right into the refrigerator, we say bye-bye, and we hope we prep all of that on the day that we are planning to make that meal, right? So this is where I want you to think about utilizing ingredient prep rather than focusing on that classic meal prep where maybe some of us have seen it online or follow social media influencers or bloggers where you see their perfectly nice prepped meal of brown rice and their broccoli and their chicken. That takes a lot of time and effort, and that's great if you're able to do that. But again, we're really thinking about the time and then also sticking to the plan. We want to keep it as simple as possible. So here, this is where I have you focus on ingredients and maybe even utilizing batch cooking. So for example, you can see in our image here, we have all of our different types of chicken. So they're all on this baking sheet and we've seasoned them in different ways and they're prepped and ready to go. So when we decide to make that meal on Tuesday or Monday or Sunday, our chicken's already ready. And so this is going to really decrease that time we actually spend prepping the meal in the moment. We're just taking that extra time to help prep things now. This is also where you can do set it and forget it techniques. So I do love a sheet pan method, just like you see here with our chicken, but also Instapot, crock pots. This is where you can put ingredients in, you set the time, you forget it, and then before you know it, it's ready for you to consume in 30 minutes or pack away and put it away so that way you'll have it for the next couple of days. And so really think about what you can do in that 30 to 60 minutes chunk of time as you're unloading your groceries into the refrigerator. What can you do now to save yourself some time during the week? And to help provide an example of that, this is where I'm going to show you how to prep for success in just 60 minutes. So imagine this. We have all of our meal planned and ready for the week. We just got home from the grocery store and we're starting to unpack and set everything up with the intention when we're prepping for success, we're keeping it simple. One protein, one veggie. That's all I want you to think about. One protein, one veggie. Simple but easy to execute and really checking off the protein part of our PFC and then the fiber part for our PFC. So in those first 5 minutes, unpack your groceries, leave out the ingredients that you need, and we're going to set things up. So this is where you might need your knives, you'll need a cutting board, maybe prep containers, different seasonings depending on what you're doing. And for the sake of our example here, this is where we're going to prep some ground turkey ahead of time that we'll use for our 3-bean chili and for our Taco Tuesday. So that'll be ready to go. And we're also going to prep up some veggies. So this is where we'll chop and have our bell peppers and onions that we can use for chili as well as our Taco Tuesday and maybe even a little something else. So in those first 5 minutes, as you see, we're setting up and we're going to then move on to the ground turkey portion. You start cooking up your turkey. You can season it simply so that way when you're actually making the meal, you can add different flavors that really accompany the flavors of the recipes. You can keep it really simple. And while that's prepping, then you want to take the time to prep your veggies. So as the ground turkey is cooking on the stove, you then turn over to maybe your kitchen island or the counter, and you just go ahead and start chopping up your veggies. So bell peppers, onions, and this is a really great trick here as well, because as you're prepping and cutting this already, maybe set aside some of those bell peppers and put them in a little snack container because that can also be reserved for something you might chomp on during the week or maybe even put in the kids' lunches or use in a salad depending on what you're doing. So that can be another fun way to also do a little prep ahead and being successful. Now, while you're chopping up your veggies, your turkey is going to eventually be done, and you're going to portion that into 2 different containers, let that cool, one for chili, one for Taco Tuesday, and set that aside. And then you'll go ahead and you'll prep your bell peppers and onions. And while you're cooking that, you'll then again let it cool, set it aside into different containers. And then that way you have things that are already semi-prepared and ready to go. So when it comes to Tuesday and you're making it through the week and it's time for Taco Tuesday, you already have a bunch of things prepped, and that's going to make it so much easier for you to execute. And so, yes, this takes some planning and some thought, but hopefully this shows you that by just utilizing those 60 minutes, once you get home from the grocery store, you can really help yourself take advantage of the time that you're already setting aside to do this with prepping one protein and one veggie. And so now that we've gone through all of that, I really want you to think about what are you more likely to do now that you've learned about the 3 Ps of meal planning. So again, pull out your cameras on your cell phones or tablets. Go ahead and enter in the link here into your space or into your email or, oh my gosh, your web bar, and go ahead and fill this out. What are you feeling a little bit more likely to do now that you've learned some different tips and tricks about the 3 Ps? And I'll give us a few minutes to do that. All right, just a few more seconds to log your answers of what you're more likely to do now that you've learned about the 3 Ps. Okay, and we're gonna move on in just 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. And so what are we feeling that we can do now that we've learned about the 3 Ps? So plan our meals ahead of time, 17%. Excellent. Using grocery delivery or pickup services, wonderful. Ooh, I love this. This is great. 42%. Buy pre-chopped or semi-prepared items. Yep. And prep 1 to 2 ingredients. I wish all of us were saying all of the above, but I guess that means we have some more work to do and some experimentation. But yes, hopefully this is giving you a little bit more confidence that if you've been planning and or prepping your meals, that you can take some pressure off, keep it simplified, and maybe find some shortcuts for making the meal preparation process a little bit easier with some semi-prepared or pre-chopped items to really make it not only taste great, to make it a little bit more time efficient, but to keep it to be something that you actually can consistently do. Sticking to the plan is a big challenge along with time. And so the easier we can make it, the more likely we're going to continue to do it. And with that, thank you so much for being here and talking about Meal Planning Magic Part 1. Meal Planning Magic Part 2 will be next month in June. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't registered for that for June 18th, don't forget to scan the QR code here. And I hope you enjoyed all of the tips and tricks about the 3 Ps.
That was so helpful, Gina. Thank you so much for sharing all of those tips and tricks. I'm excited to go grocery shopping this week with all of those new tips. I hope you all learned something new as well. So now we're going to kick off the Q&A portion. If you haven't already entered a question that you have into the Q&A chat box here in Zoom, please do so now, and we'll try our best to get to your question. The first question is, what are some good vegetarian options for meal planning, and how can I keep them fresh and safe to eat throughout the week?
A really great question. So when it comes to vegetarian lifestyle and having something that's prepped and nutritious, I often think about the nice protein options first. And so this is where I often recommend doing and things that will hold up well. So typically I recommend a firm tofu, a great protein source, and firm tofus hold up a little bit better when it comes to sitting in the fridge for a couple days or even a week, as well as absorbing flavor. It's a little bit more firm in that texture, so it doesn't fall apart like some of the less firm tofu options. So I would say doing like a tofu stir fry would be a really great option, or even doing, if you're doing breakfast for dinner as a fun theme, you could crumble up that tofu and put it in a saucepan with some veggies and maybe some other whole grains like quinoa, etc. So tofu would be a great option. If you're also doing other plant-based options, I would say incorporating edamame. And this is where I also recommend incorporating whole grains that also naturally give you a little bit of protein as well as fiber. So for example, if you're going to do edamame, which is going to have some protein content, putting that together with a cold pasta salad. So doing edamame, lots of veggies, having a high protein lentil or chickpea based pasta. And so throwing that all together could be a really nice option that stays well for the week. This is another great option would be beans or lentils, one of my favorite plant-based proteins that really work well for a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle. And beans hold up really well in the fridge for a long period of time. And I often say that when you put some flavor with beans, they often taste better the longer that they sit. So for example, If you think back to that pantry example where we have all of those beans in the cupboard, you would go ahead and you'd toss together garbanzo beans or chickpeas, black beans and some pinto beans, throw in some fresh herbs like mint and parsley, chop up some bell peppers, some red onion, throw in some red wine vinegar, add some salt and pepper, and that could be a nice bean salad you put on top of a bed of greens, and then pair it with a whole grain option like farro or bulgur or some kind of a grain like that to really make it a complete meal. So it would be one of the ways I would suggest is finding your protein choice first, filling it in with a fiber and fun flair, and then complementing that vegan or vegetarian option with your grains. That'd be one way I would say to go ahead and execute it. And I know there was something about trying to keep your vegetable or meal choices fresh. And so when it comes to vegetables, vegetables can spoil pretty quickly. And that's not to say that you shouldn't buy them by any means, but think about how quickly you are planning to eat them. And if you're someone who you look on the inside and you say, I know if I buy this fresh broccoli, things just happen and I don't want it to go bad. So maybe for you, that's a great place to go ahead and buy some frozen broccoli. And one of my favorite tips for utilizing a frozen veggie, because sometimes those can turn out a little bit soggy, is utilizing this no oil or seasoning option first. So what I mean by that is you take that bag of frozen broccoli, you put it right onto the sheet pan, nothing on it, you pop it into the oven, and you let all that water cook off in the first 10 to 15 minutes. You pull it out, you season up, do a little avocado oil spray, and then you put it back in, and you then have the crispiest broccoli that you would have thought would have been soggy because of all that water. So that could be a really great technique to make frozen veggies a little bit more appealing and fun. I'll stop there because I could go on forever.
Thank you so much, Gina. Okay, the second question is, how do you plan for a family of four with one vegan, one extremely picky eater, no sauce, no cooked veggies, very limited choices, one diabetic, and one uncomplicated eater?
This is a really great question. And this is a very common challenge, right? For many different families who are eating and trying to build plans for so many different eating preferences, maybe allergies, thinking about different health comorbidities. So, what I recommend for this situation is focusing on creating bowls and letting people pick. So, rather than saying we're going to have, chicken with sweet potatoes and asparagus, which wouldn't work for someone who's vegan, and maybe for the picky eater, the cooked veggies are a complete no. This is where we want to create bowls. So this is where I would say for a Mediterranean bowl, you'd have 5 different options that you could easily put on the table. So for example, you maybe have some grilled chicken, you'd have some chickpeas, you'd have some raw veggies, maybe a plethora of bell peppers, zucchini, mushrooms, and then you have some grains. And so this is options that you can easily mix and match as a family. So for the individual who would be vegan, they could load up their bowl with the grain, extra veggies, and the beans, and that would be a nice protein source for them. Versus someone who's a little bit on the pickier side and isn't interested in cooked veggies, they could go ahead and do the raw veggies if that works for them. And then that also isn't incorporating sauces. So that was part of maybe the aversion to meals is like having it be too saucy. So I often say doing bowls or kind of allowing people to create their own with a variety of ingredients can be a really great way to start. And that really alleviates you of trying to make one dish work for everybody, but you have ingredients that work for everyone that we can mix and match. And that also helps to avoid some food waste as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. What's a good way to ensure that a Pizza Friday adheres to the PFC guidelines?
Yes, I love this question, and I'm a big connoisseur of Pizza Fridays. So, ways that I often like to think about that is really prioritizing a lean protein option and veggies, and with making that fun, right? So, in that example that I was showing you earlier, we had our pizza dough, and that was just a pre-made option from Trader Joe's that I find is easy to whip together. And so, when you're thinking about those toppings, you can start with a variety. So, I usually say chicken or turkey. So for example, if you're going to do chicken, you can utilize some pre-cooked chicken or a rotisserie chicken, or if you want to grill up your own chicken, that would be a great, nice, lean protein option. Because typically when we're thinking about pizza, we're often having higher fat, less lean options of protein. So thinking of sausage, bacon, maybe a little pork belly action, depends on what kind of pizza you're having there. But I say start with a lean option and you can use a sprinkle of something fun. So for example, making the bulk of your toppings, that chicken, that shredded chicken, but maybe doing a few pieces of your favorite prosciutto or maybe a few pieces of pepperoni, but it's not the whole topping of the pizza. So that's one way I'll have you try to think about it. The other way is just making the vegetables fun and colorful. So having a variety. So if you're doing this with your family or a partner or roommates, everyone picks their favorite vegetable and we all slice it up and you can mix and match. So that's one way I'll have you do it as well. So you can do bell peppers, mushrooms, zucchini. You can go ahead and do artichoke hearts. You can do jalapeno. You could do anything that your heart desires. That's one way I'll have you do it. And then in addition to that, I often say if you're putting sauce on the pizza, opt for a tomato sauce. That's going to just amp up the nutrient quality, the antioxidant properties because of the tomatoes that are present. But it doesn't just have to stop there. Maybe you're also thinking, I just love cheese and pepperoni pizza. And so, okay, it's okay to have that cheese and pepperoni pizza, but to amp up the P and to amp up the F for fiber, maybe that's where you incorporate a side salad. And in that side salad, you have green leafy lettuce options, maybe some mixed greens, add some tomatoes, some red onion, top it with some extra protein, maybe a hard-boiled egg or some type of beans. And so that's a really nice way to create balance with PFC, but still enjoying the foods that you love. So a classic pepperoni and cheese pizza, right? So just creating that balance there can be a really great way to view it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. I think we have time for one more question. And this question will be, do you have any advice or resources for people who maybe physically can't cook for long periods of time or have difficulty, kind of getting in the kitchen to begin with?
Yes, and I don't want to give too much away, but I can imagine next month for Meal Planning Magic Part 2, we'll be talking a little bit more about meal delivery services and ways to execute that other barrier, right? Of I don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen, or maybe it's difficult for me to stand or spend a lot of time in the kitchen in that way. And so having a meal delivery service is one thing that we'll be talking about in Meal Planning Part 2. But one thing I will say is utilizing frozen meals. Oftentimes, again, frozen foods can get a really bad reputation, but there are a lot of brands out there that can be incredibly helpful. And so you might be thinking, like, there's so many frozen meal options. How do I even make that work? And so, a general guideline that I like to say, when you're at the grocery store and you're looking for a frozen meal that you can just pop right into the microwave and have it ready, but it's still giving you the nutrition that you need, I say usually for a frozen entree, look for something around 500 calories ish, or maybe a little bit less, depending on, of course, your goals might be different, but 500 calories is going to give us a good amount of energy. For the total protein content, I usually say 15 grams or more. Ideally, I'd love to see 20 plus grams per meal, but again, sometimes 15 and being higher is going to be that goal. Then when it comes to sodium, because a lot of times our frozen meals can be a little bit higher in salt, I usually say try to look for about 500 milligrams of sodium. That's really going to help you narrow down a lot of your choices, because when you start to look at the back, you start to realize, okay, this is over my calorie goal or too low of a calorie goal. I'm looking for 500 for calories, 500 milligrams for sodium, and then 15 plus grams of protein and more. Once you kind of start there, that can be a really great way to go. And of course, we can look at things like carbohydrate, fiber, sugars, all of that. But I often say start with those three to make it a little bit less overwhelming and go from there. And then we also want to think about pre-washed greens. That can be a really nice topper for a lot of these prepped meals. So for example, Healthy Choice has these power or zero carb bowls that often are packed with protein, fiber, and lots of color, but maybe you need a little bit more oomph. And so that's where maybe buying a bagged salad kit, having your frozen meal and either pairing it together or even just adding some extra greens on top can be a really great way to maximize the nutrition quality, get that PFC, but also doesn't require you to spend any time standing, chopping, cutting, any of that.
All right. Thank you so much, Gina. We had a lot of good questions. And we couldn't get them all today, but please come back next month for Meal Planning Magic Part 2. And I think we'll answer a lot more of those questions. Thank you all for attending, and a big thank you to our speaker, Gina, for the engaging and very helpful talk. This recording will be posted next week on the Stanford Health Library webinar under Lifestyle and Weight Management Recorded Lectures. I've also put a link in the Q&A chat box here. We look forward to seeing you next month for part 2 of Meal Planning Magic. And as a reminder, our webinars occur the third Wednesday of every month from 5 to 5:45. All right, see you then. Thank you, everybody. Bye.